Lesson 2, reading like a writer. The best writers are the ones who do a ton of reading, and I thoroughly believe that. Our objectives for this lesson are students will learn how to identify scenes in creative nonfiction texts. Students will learn how to analyze writing for authors' purpose, style, and choices, and students will understand the new assignment. The assignment, read a variety of texts chosen by you, but they have to be creative nonfiction. I'll give you a list of resources. You'll see that within the bundle itself on My Big Campus. And identify the scenes within each text. Then analyze author's choices, style, and purpose. You will be turning in a journal stating what you read, who it was by, where you read it, and what you discovered about the topics in the previous bullet point. A minimum of 3 texts are required to be shown in your journal, and you will find more specifics of that assignment within the bundle. I just wanted to preface this lesson with the assignment so you're understanding the purpose for what we're about to go through. Scenes. So as you noticed, one of the things we're going to be doing is identifying scenes within a text. Now, the cool part about text is the new definition doesn't really constrict to just literature. It can be movies, it can be films, it can be things like that. So we're going to watch a little clip from March of the Penguins, if you're familiar with that, and then we're going to go over an excerpt from You Can't Make This Stuff Up. It's an example called Frank Sinatra Has a Cold. So let's look at the clip. Okay, here's the clip. Let's see if I can make it full screen for you. And that'll do it for that one. Now, this scene has several creative elements. The movie March of the Penguins is more like a documentary in essence because it is a true real-life event based on real animals in this case and things like that. So we have this idea, and why is it creative? Well, in movies we have camera angles, we have music choices, and everything else. The purpose of this particular clip and this particular scene might be to show the beauty of the penguins because it has that very serene feeling, and I'll let you kind of infer the rest of it on your own. But as you can see in that just brief scene, we were able to see like the bubbles in the water, we had sound effects, the music in there, and just the swift, beautiful, graceful movements of the penguins. So going back to the PowerPoint and using Kobo again to show you an excerpt. Oops. All right, here it is. Now this excerpt is of a short story type piece that was published in Esquire. You don't need to know a whole heck of a lot about the piece in its entirety. It's about 22,000 words in length, which is basically a third of a book, if you were to think of it like that, of a regular size average book. So here is just in the highlighted, just a little scene here that I've taken from this book, You Can't Make This Stuff Up. The room cracked with the clack of billiard balls. There were about a dozen spectators in the room, most of them young men who were watching Leo Durocher shoot against 2 other aspiring hustlers who were not very good. This private drinking club has among its membership many actors, directors, writers, models, nearly all of them a good deal younger than Sinatra or Durocher, and much more casual in the way they dress for the evening. Many of the young women, their long hair flowing loosely below their shoulders, wore tight fanny-fitting Jack's pants and very expensive sweaters, and a few of the young men wore blue or green velour shirts with high collars and narrow tight pants and Italian loafers. As you can see, this is a very descriptive scene. If you were able to picture the scene in your head, then we know that the author does a great job of providing us with that detailed and that vivid imagery. This by itself is a scene. Now the funny thing about scenes is that they can be a paragraph in length, or they can be a sentence long. It just depends on the scene. Scenes can also range in a variation from, like I said, a sentence to maybe 3 pages. So it all just depends on what you are reading. So again, those are 2 scenes that you could pick out from different texts of creative nonfiction. All right, each piece of creative nonfiction is made up of scenes, as I stated earlier. Authors choose these scenes then to communicate a point with the audience. So if you were to think about the 2 scenes that we just looked at, ask yourself, what was the author's purpose in choosing the scene? Why was it important? Why might he or she have made that choice? Just like you will have to do, you'll have to make similar choices. When you think back, if you're doing like a personal experience or whether or not you're thinking of writing about something from history, there's going to be this vast continuum where there's just a slew of detail, and it's up to you as an author to make choices and to pick out very specifically what you would like to show your audience. That is the craft of writing. That is the structure of writing. That's the part where you get to decide what is the most beautiful, the most exciting, the most fearful, the most just totally compelling scene. And that is the part where you are either going to bore your readers to tears, or you will excite them. Maybe you will cause them to be moved to tears. Maybe you will cause gut gut busting laughter. It's just totally up to you, and that is the coolest part about this whole process to me. So without further ranting, we'll go on to the next part. A highlighter test. This is something that I read about that I thought was really cool. As you read each piece, and if you are reading online like I do a lot, obviously you can highlight by just using your cursor. There are several, like if you want to export something into Google Documents and highlight it that way, or mentally highlight things like that. If it's on a text where you can highlight, that's fine too. But as you read, highlight each scene that you notice. Like I said before, it could be one sentence, it could be several pages. Ask yourself at the end of each piece, how much highlighting did you do? How many scenes were there in each piece? When you are writing your own, you're going to have to decide how many scenes to include, and then alternating those scenes with essential information that's fact-based, so that you don't bore. That's a very tricky balance that we'll get into more later. All right, so that's the highlighter test. That's something that you will be doing with each part or each piece that you choose to read, and that's something that you should definitely be referencing inside of that journal that you will be handing in. Author's purpose, and I want to just really quickly review author's purpose and style to help you get a sense of what you could write about within your journal and what to notice as you are reading. I want you to ask yourself the following questions. Why is the author writing? Does the author have a message? Is the author biased or unbiased? Why might it be important for the author to tell this story? The big question is why. Now, you all are in this class, so why do you have to write this piece? Well, Mrs. Bauer told me that that's what we're doing. Well, not exactly, because you get to pick the topic, and I'm not telling you what topics to pick. I will say along the lines of topics that because this is a school class, you need to make sure that everything you write is school appropriate, and that same old rules about violence, weapons, suicide, deaths, anything that is overly gruesome, gory, things like that. Use your common sense, use your best judgment, and I will just take this opportunity to plug that, part of my job is being a mandatory reporter. So if you do write something in there that is very concerning and it makes me question your safety or the safety of others, you better believe I will be reporting it. So just kind of as an FYI there. All right, moving on then, it's the author's purpose. Why is it happening? Let's go to style. With each piece you read, ask yourself the following questions. I suggest writing notes in a reader's notebook to help you write the journal later on. What literary devices does the author use? So we're talking metaphors, similes, personification, the list goes on. If you are kind of rusty on what literary devices are, I suggest doing a little bit of research there before you begin reading. And then secondly, just because they're used doesn't mean they're always effective, so ask yourself and kind of look as you actively read. What type of sentence structure does the author use? Are there a lot of complex sentences? I think of William Golding's novel Lord of the Flies, he uses a ton of compound complex sentences in order, and it can be kind of tricky for people. He also has an interesting use, and this is the next bullet point, of dialogue, where the dialogue that Golding uses doesn't always say who said it, so you have to be really following along closely. Is there any dialogue? Speculate why or why not, and is it effective? What form of writing is it? Is it an article, an essay, or book, or a poem? Just like you have flexibility in what you choose, uh, kind of keep an eye out for that. If you know you would like to write poetry that is creative nonfiction, then I suggest going out to find that, poems by people to show you some, maybe give you some ideas of what you can do as well. And is it an effective way to tell the story? All right, so our objectives from this lesson were to learn how to identify scenes in creative nonfiction text. It might take some practice to do, so I encourage you to begin the process, and hopefully by the end of it, you will have a better understanding of scenes. Students oh, there's a typo, sorry about that, learn how to analyze writing for authors' purpose, style, and choices. And lastly, students will understand the new assignment. So just recapping that assignment really quickly, read a variety of texts chosen by you and identify scenes, then analyze author's choices, style, and purpose. I would do that through a reader's notebook entry. And then turning in a journal stating what you read, who it was by, where you read it, and what you discovered about the topics in the previous bullet point. A minimum of 3 texts are required to be shown in your journal, and typically journals are no shorter than a page. They can be longer if you choose to do that, but generally speaking, no shorter than a page typed out. So I was going to tell you something else. Oh, about this assignment too. You may choose the options that I have listed for you in the bundle, or if you choose to go beyond that and do some of your own research, obviously that is encouraged. I would suggest maybe just if within your journal there where you found it, if it's a URL link or something, so I can check it out as well. So without further ado, that wraps up lesson 2. Please let me know if you have any questions, and do so reference the bundle for the specifics of the assignment and the resources to complete it.